This hearing will come to order, and today we meet to review the Syrian crisis. It was 2 years ago last week, that on the nightly news we saw those protesters walking through the street chanting, "Peaceful, peaceful." And the thing the world saw next were that the Syrian forces opened up with small arms fire on the marchers. And over the ensuing weeks, that was followed by artillery barrages, followed by tanks flattening villages, followed eventually by aerial bombardment, and finally by Scud missiles into cities. We are now 2 years into that Syrian uprising, and for 2 bloody years, U.S. policy has been adrift. Initially, the Obama administration saw Assad as a reformer, in their words. Once the revolt started, it backed UN diplomacy and then bet on Moscow to play a constructive role. Predictably, none of this has worked. Yet even today, Secretary Kerry talks of Assad coming to the table. This is the Assad who is bombing villages in Syria. This is the Assad who is ordering teenagers tortured and, frankly, is engaged in murdering his populace. The ancient city of Homs is now in ruins. 70,000 Syrians are dead. 1 million refugees have spilled into neighboring countries, destabilizing those countries. And there are troubling reports that Assad may be moving to unleash chemical weapons. The U.S. has been generous in supporting suffering Syrians, but perhaps naively so. Much of our humanitarian aid has been funneled through the UN and through other international organizations that are largely restricted to areas controlled by the Syrian regime. Now, that is absurd. Only recently has the U.S. begun to push food aid directly to the Syrian opposition. That shift, frankly, should accelerate and dramatically. And I really wonder about providing any humanitarian aid through the UN that ends up going through the regime at all, because it indirectly helps Assad and therefore presumably prolongs the conflict and prolongs the human suffering. Syria is today a humanitarian nightmare. It's also a great strategic challenge. At the end of the day, it might be an opportunity for reform in the society in Syria, but it's also an opportunity with Assad gone, because then Iran would lose a key ally, one critical to its terrorist operations, including against Israel. And that's why Iran and Hezbollah are massively stepping up their support of the Assad regime, providing a lifeline of weapons, providing fighters on the ground. Much of this weaponry, by the way, flows through Iraq, and that can't continue without consequences. Unfortunately, jihadist groups are gaining strength and popularity in a portion of Syria. They've been able to convince too many Syrians that they are on their side. Al-Nusra and aligned radical groups fighting to remove Assad are also preparing for the day after his fall. They are competing with the civil society groups behind the Free Syrian Army. Syrian extremists are translating their battle success into authority over society as a whole, influencing courts, schools, and mosques. But I should say that most of those extremists are from outside Syria. And this is something very vexing to civil society in Syria, who have shared with us their concerns about the influx of these foreign fighters. And their concern is that these extremists are making inroads. To avoid such a hostile future Syria, armed with chemical weapons, we need to help better organize and empower the Syrian opposition. Those Syrians who began the revolt by chanting peaceful, peaceful. We have let them down and let down our strategic interests. Some believe that it is time to provide arms to vetted opposition groups. Others worry about a potentially lengthy and deepening engagement and note that many weapons are already flowing into Syria. But the British and French have come to realize the biggest winner in the arms embargo has been Assad. Everything should be considered, but the U.S. could have the greatest impact through training, intelligence, and logistics. It has been said that the U.S. has no good options in Syria, and that's probably true. Stay away, as we mainly have, and bad things are guaranteed to happen. Get more involved, as some are calling for, and good things might happen. All of it is incredibly unpredictable. The best we can do is know what we can, realize what we can't, and make decisions as we must. I'll now turn to Congressman Ted Deutsch, who fills in for Ranking Member Engel. Big shoes to fill today, especially given Mr. Engel's efforts on Syria over many years, which has helped move the administration to more actively consider the range of U.S. options in recent weeks. Mr. Deutsch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ambassador Ford.